Hey guys, I don't know what's happened to my icon. My icon's disappeared. Anyway, this is completely unexpected. Did not plan at all. I literally had 3 minutes to set up this live stream. So very disorganized. Not even had a chance to work out why my icon's disappeared. No idea. But Thomas Cashman, who has been convicted of the murder of Olivia Pratt-Korbel from Dovecot in Liverpool, a shooting that occurred in Olivia's own home on August 22nd of last year. He was found guilty on Friday, and his sentencing is happening right now. And normally courts are not allowed at all, cameras, are not allowed in courts at all in the UK, but there is a scheme that judges are trialling doing the sentencing live. And this is one of those cases. The judge, Justice Yip, has agreed that Cashman's sentencing is going to be live. So that's what we're currently waiting for. The hearing started at 2 p.m. So if I just switch to this, BBC are going to be broadcasting it. Liverpool Echo are broadcasting it. And there is live reporting. So what we'll see today, this is from the BBC. The sentencing hearing will start shortly at Manchester Crown Court. First, the court will hear some discussion of the sentencing guidelines and then any mitigation from Cashman's defence team. This bit won't be filmed, but our Northwest correspondent, Judith Moritz, will bring us the key details from court. After that, the judge, Mrs. Justice Yip, will deliver her sentencing remarks on camera before saying how many years Cashman will serve. You can also watch BBC live coverage at the top of the page. Just hit the play button. I have no idea where the play button is. Okay. In courtroom 1, waiting for the hearing to begin. So that was 3 minutes ago. Olivia's family are here. They're all wearing pink in her memory. Her mum, Cheryl, is holding a memory teddy bear made of fabric from Olivia's pajamas. Oh. Oh. And then the Liverpool Echo, who are also going to stream this live. So they've not updated yet. Let's see if they're on the Facebook page yet. So we've got a few minutes to wait, but the sentencing is going to be live. If we can actually find a stream that is useful. The report from Liverpool Echo said the starting point for murder with a gun is 30 years. Let's have a look what they've said. Okay, we'll go back a little bit. So this is 1:15, and then 13:54. Good afternoon, all. We are in position in Manchester Crown Court where Thomas Cashman will shortly learn his fate after being convicted of the murder of Olivia Pratt-Korbel. As most of you will be aware, in the UK, conviction for murder attracts a mandatory life sentence, and a judge will then set a minimum term for the defendant that must serve in prison before they can apply for parole. The defendant must serve every day of that minimum term. Even if it expires, there's no guarantee they will be released immediately, if ever. If a defendant is convicted of murder, if ever released, they will remain on licence for life, and any failure to comply with their licence conditions or any further offending can lead to recall to prison. Our court reporter, Adam Everett, is in the courtroom. Proceedings should begin around 2 p.m. So it's currently 26 minutes past. So which will be delivered after prosecution and defence have addressed the court. You will be able to see that broadcast live on Echo's Facebook page in due course. So I've got Echo's Facebook page up here. So Just keep refreshing it. If anybody finds a live feed before I do, please do let me know. We usually have these problems when we do live court reporting from courts in the US. We normally have this problem. I've never had it before, though, in the UK because they so rarely broadcast anything. They so rarely broadcast anything. Thank you, Jackie. You're going to have a look. It's live on Sky News, is it? Okay. Great. All right. On YouTube, because I don't have Sky. Watch live Thomas Cashman's sentencing. Okay. So they're waiting to go live. Sky are waiting to go live. So we've now got 3 possible feeds. We've got Liverpool Echo on Facebook, we've got BBC, and we've got Sky News who are waiting to start their broadcast. Yeah, Melissa, so surprised we're actually going to see this one. It's entirely down to the judge. It's something that they have been trialing for a while in the UK. There was one that I reported on a few months ago now. The woman who murdered her friend and then put her friend's body in a suitcase. The sentencing for that, I can't remember the name of the person, but it's on this channel, Michelle Walks, and I did a video about that and I played some of the sentencing, but it wasn't live. It wasn't live. It's on Now TV's, due to begin shortly. Almost. We've got 3 feeds anyway. So Sky News are waiting to go live. Liverpool Echo are going to go live on their Facebook, and then BBC are also saying that they're going to go live. I'm guessing that every news source in the UK will have this. All trials should be recorded. Public should have visibility on our court systems. I believe so as well. I think the UK is way behind the times. I mean, anybody can go into a court in the UK and watch. You know, they are public information. So anybody can literally physically go and sit in the public gallery, but it's not quite the same, is it? I think we should have televised trials like the US do. I mean, to be fair, you know, it's in the US, it's entirely down to the judge. Like the Vallow case, the judge isn't allowing cameras. That's due to start. Does that start today, the Vallow case? Letitia Stokes' case starts today. It'll be just the finalisation of jury selection, but so we're still waiting on this. So it is just going to be the sentencing that is live. He'll probably get 4 months on tag. I think he'll get at least 30. The case of Katie Kenyon from Lancashire, different court, because that was in Lancashire, but the judge gave him 32 years. Andrew Burfield got 32 years for murdering Katie Kenyon. But the case I was at when I was a jury member, 2 guys, a father and a son, kicked a pensioner to death. A 67-year-old man kicked him to death, and they only got 16 years. The dad got 16 years, and then the son, who was just doing his dad's bidding, got 15 years. That's all. Yeah, Melissa, Letitia's will be televised. There's a camera in the court, but it's on WebEx. But I do believe that there's several YouTubers are going to stream it through WebEx. I think Law and Crime Network are also going to stream it on their YouTube. So it's not like on television as such, but the court does have cameras. So the court has given people permission to stream their WebEx. So yes, you will be able to see it. There are several YouTubers that have said that they're going to stream it, and Court TV said that they're going to stream it as well. Not Court TV, sorry, Law and Crime Network. So we're still waiting here. Let's have a look what BBC is saying. Oh, hold on. Court is extremely quiet. Olivia's family, police investigation team and the prosecuting barristers are all in position. However, Thomas Cashman is yet to appear in dock and his defence team is not yet in court. So that's 7 minutes ago. So there is a delay. It was meant to start at 2. You should keep your eye on Darren G. His YouTube channel is quite interesting because he knew a lot of the criminals, including Cashman. Cashman came round to Darren's flat with a pistol once. Wow. Darren G. All right, I'll check him out. Yeah, Harry Potter's beard. Notification on 4 p.m. start with a content creator for Letitia. You can name the content creators who are going to stream this. It's fine. I think Sleuth Mom's going to stream it. She was doing all the jury selection last week. There's several who said they're going to stream it. So you feel free to name them. I only don't like people naming content creators if there's going to be any like aggravation, to be honest. Hold on, where were we? Sky News. Still waiting. So obviously Ikimal's streaming it, is he? Okay. So you can take your pick. I'm not going to stream it simply because it's an awkward time for me because Colorado's behind, 7 hours behind. So if it's 9 a.m. at 9 a.m. for Colorado, 4 p.m. for me, and then it's going to go on till like after midnight. So I've said if there's anything really interesting that comes out, what I'll do is a recap stream on that bit. That's what I've said I'm going to do, but I'm going to be watching it all. I'm just not going to sit and stream it all because I'll probably fall asleep maybe before midnight and then wake up at some point in the middle of the night and have to go back and rewatch it because that's what I do. That's what I was doing with Murdoch. I was falling asleep and then like rewatching it. I know, I couldn't imagine being Olivia's mom. I know, exactly. The bullet went straight through her hand. She'll have a scar on her hand for the rest of her life and looking at it every day. Yes, that very same bullet went straight through her hand and then into Olivia's chest. Grizzly True Crime's also streaming it. Is she in the Netherlands? So she'll be an hour ahead of me, I think. Or maybe we're on the same time now. Because British summertime, I don't know, but yeah, so she's going to do some late nights. I am trying to keep up with all the time zones. It drives me insane. But I know what I'm like. I'll fall asleep and then, because I'd at least have to keep monitoring the stream just to make sure that everything was going ahead all right. And I didn't stream Murdoch because I just wanted to sit and watch it. I wanted to be a viewer. So, so there's nothing at all yet. Nothing at all yet. But I can actually, while we're waiting, excuse me, add my tags on to this. Because I've not even done that. Because I didn't have time. Thomas Cashman. Oops. I don't even know if I've spelled that right, but let's save that. And I'm going to put this on subscribers only for 20 minutes, simply because that stops them porn bombing. Okay. All right, that's my stream set up. Let's see if we've got any movement on this yet. Nope. Not yet. Didn't he end up testifying? No. No, he didn't. Why did you do it? Well, the full story is in the Olivia Pratt-Korbel playlist that I've got. That's on MichelleAfterDark. But I did a lot of the videos on this channel. I just playlist them, or I playlist everything over on MichelleAfterDark. Okay, so he was chasing a man called Joseph Nee, and chasing him with 2 guns. So he managed to shoot Joseph Nee, and then his gun malfunctioned. So Joseph Nee managed to get away, having been shot. And Cheryl Korbel, Olivia's mother, had opened the door a little bit to see what the commotion was outside because she heard gunshots. And Joseph Nee saw the open door, like the crack in the door, and barged his way through. So as Cheryl Korbel was trying to shut the door, Thomas Cashman came up shooting with another gun. He had another gun. He had 2 guns with him. He shot a door frame, and Joseph Nee and Cheryl Korbel were both trying to shut the door behind them, and they couldn't shut the door in time. Here we go. Right. Yeah, so they couldn't shut the door, and one bullet hit the door frame. The second bullet hit Cheryl Korbel in the hand, and then went straight through her hand into Olivia's chest, and she died shortly thereafter. So that's the story. Right, we're going to switch now to Sky News and listen to what they're saying, because that should give us some updates. So I'm going to mute out. Just give me a thumbs up that you can hear this okay once I mute out. Okay, let's go.
And further counts of attempted murder, the wounding of Olivia's mother, Cheryl Korbel, and 2 counts of possessing a firearm. That is quite an unusual turn of events. Olivia's family are here walking into court today. Olivia's mum said she simply didn't really know how she felt at the moment. A big part of them attending court, you might assume, was to be able to see Thomas Cashman as he's sentenced for the murder of little 9-year-old Olivia, but they won't receive that today unless perhaps during that break between the victim impact statements being read out and the judge returning for sentencing, maybe that might change. But we understand for now that Thomas Cashman, 34 years old, will not be in court in person to hear that sentence being delivered.
Sentencing that we are expecting this hour. As you said, it may go on until after 3 o'clock, depending on what's happening in the courtroom there at Manchester Crown Court. Worth reminding viewers, Katerina, how we got here today. Thomas Cashman found guilty on all counts on Thursday last week, including the count of murder. Remind us of those and what the expected sentence will be today.
Well, there are 5 charges that Thomas Cashman was found guilty of. The jury out for a relatively short space of time in the end, about a day and a half of deliberations after a 3-week trial here. Those 5 counts, including the murder of 9-year-old Olivia, the wounding of her mother, Cheryl Korbel, the attempted murder of Joseph Nee, who the prosecution argued was the intended target of the initial attack by Thomas Cashman, and then 2 counts of possession of an illegal firearm. Now, after being found guilty of murder, there would be a mandatory life sentence, a minimum of 30 years, and then what will have been considered already by the judge and will be further argued in court today will be mitigating factors by both sides, both the prosecution and the defence. But I think one thing that will be taken into consideration is that Thomas Cashman throughout this has not shown any remorse, certainly in court. He has vehemently denied all of the charges against him, so that might play a part in determining the length of the sentence that he receives here. But it will be an extremely significant moment. This is a case, and you've heard it from the guests that you've spoken to over the last 40 minutes or so, Sarah Jane, this is a case that has shaken an entire community, an entire city, and it's probably not overblown to say when the news came out of the death of an innocent child, 9 years old, in a gangland related shooting, it was a story that shocked the entire country, and people will be watching. They will be noting now that Thomas Cashman has decided not to appear in court, to hear himself being sentenced, to hear firsthand the impact from Olivia's family that this has had on them. And I think it will be of course, an incredibly difficult but significant day for Olivia's family. We have seen her mother and her father arriving here in court today. Olivia Pratt-Korbel walking in, clutching a pink teddy bear of Olivia's. Many of the family members wearing pink into court today, as they have throughout the trial, but also as they did at her funeral last year. I believe you were working that day, as I was, and remember hearing the eulogy of Olivia's mother and how she described that she still couldn't say goodbye to her daughter, and she would just every night in her head or out loud just say good night. And that is something that her mother will carry with her, and we are expecting a fuller family statement after this sentencing today.
Katerina, thank you. Katerina Vitozzi there, following events at Manchester Crown Court, the latest. As you heard there, Thomas Cashman, the man found guilty of the murder of little Olivia, refusing to go into the courtroom for his sentencing. We're going to follow events inside the courtroom closely here on Sky News. We'll bring you the sentencing live as and when it gets underway. Thomas Cashman refusing to go into the courtroom has caused a delay. We'll bring you an update as soon as we get it. But here at Sky News, we have spoken to the Chief Constable of Merseyside Police, who told us that Olivia's murder should be a defining moment for the region.
Absolutely delighted that Thomas Cashman has been found guilty of the murder of Olivia. Devastating for her family. Simply can't imagine the pain that they've been going through since August last year, and I absolutely send my heartfelt condolences to the family. I know the conviction today is not going to bring Olivia back. It's not going to ease the pain of losing a daughter, but some small comfort that the person who snuffed out the life of Olivia far too early is now facing a life sentence behind bars. I would describe him as a coward, despicable. He decided on that night, or decided in the days beforehand, to play out a petty dispute using guns on the streets of Merseyside in the community of Dovecot. And that has had a devastating impact for Olivia's family, which they will live with for the rest of their lives, every waking moment and every moment they go to sleep. He made great play in the trial that he is a dad, and yet he's put Olivia's family through this trial. I hope he reflects every morning when he wakes up behind bars and every night when he goes to sleep about what he's put Olivia's family through. A cowardly criminal who decides to take the law into his own hands and settle petty disputes by using two firearms. Anybody who does that, they're not thinking about the consequences. They don't care about anybody who lives in their communities. He was just intent in settling what was a petty dispute, and the consequences for Olivia's family are devastating.
Do you believe you are on top of gang culture and organised crime in Liverpool?
I absolutely do, but I recognise that that is on the back of this year where we've had 5 people who've been killed in firearms murders. But Merseyside is recognised by HMIC FRS as outstanding in our approach to tackling serious and organised crime. We've got really strong teams in place to tackle firearms crime. We have seen in Merseyside, we are at the lowest number of firearms discharges that we've seen in 20 years. In 2012, we saw 125 firearms discharges. In 2021, that number was down at 39. So we are taking a positive and successful approach to tackling gun crime on the streets of Merseyside. Likewise with our approach to serious and organised crime. But I say that when 5 people have lost their lives, and to me, that is, the time to renew our commitment to working with our partners and working with our communities together to make sure that those offenders can't operate here in Merseyside.
While we continue to wait for the sentencing of Thomas Cashman here on Sky News, there has been a delay because Thomas Cashman wishes to be sentenced in his absence. He is refusing to enter the courtroom to hear his sentencing and hear the victim impact statements from Olivia Pratt-Korbel's family. We've got some more detail on this. And North of England correspondent Katerina Vitozzi is standing by outside Manchester Crown Court. And there's some interesting detail coming out from inside the courtroom. Katerina.
Yes, in the last few minutes, the defence barrister for Thomas Cashman, who's John Cooper KC, explained to the judge, Mrs. Justice Yip, why Thomas Cashman's decided not to come into the courtroom, although he is in the building behind me, Manchester Crown Court. And John Cooper KC saying that Mr. Cashman was aware that the CPS, that's the Crown Prosecution Service, was singing "We Are the Champions" in the corridors following the guilty verdict in his trial on Thursday. Mr. Cooper going on to say that Mr. Cashman has been spoken to and given certain advice, but that he, referring to Mr. Cashman, is concerned that the matter is turning into a circus, and it's for that reason he has not come into the courtroom. Mrs. Justice Yip said in reference to that, though, that yes, she understood that may have been a sequence of events, but regarded Mr. Cashman's decision not to attend courtroom as disrespectful, not only to the court, but those interested in the proceedings, including the family of the deceased. So just to remind you that we were expecting Thomas Cashman in court today to hear victim impact statements, to hear legal argument regarding his sentencing, but also to hear his sentencing after being found guilty of those 5 charges last week, including the murder of 9-year-old Olivia Pratt-Korbel. But as you can hear there, the reasons that he has decided not to attend or not to come into the courtroom in person after saying that he heard that the CPS, the Crown Prosecution Service, was singing "We Are the Champions" following a guilty verdict in his trial on Thursday.
We understand that everyone else with a part to play in the sentencing is inside the courtroom. No members of Thomas Cashman's family are present in the courtroom. He also looks to be absent as well. And Katerina, it's worth reminding people who may just be joining us here on Sky News, the sentence that is expected, the court duty bound to impose a sentence of life imprisonment.
Yes, and typically there would be a minimum of 30 years for a sentence of that gravity. What we will hear today in the course of the legal argument will be whether there are aggravating circumstances for that to be either longer or shorter. There are 5 charges that he will be sentenced on today. We are likely to hear if they will be run concurrently, but the murder of 9-year-old Olivia Pratt-Korbel would be the one that you would imagine would incur the longest sentence, a minimum 30 years typically, as I said. And for Olivia's family today, this would have been the last opportunity probably for them to see Thomas Cashman in a courtroom. They've arrived here today. We've seen Olivia's mum, Cheryl, walking in, clutching a pink teddy bear, one of Olivia's favourite toys. We've seen Olivia's father. We've seen other family members all coming in, as they have done over the past 3 weeks of this trial. But they will not see Thomas Cashman in the dock today unless something massively significant changes, but it seems unlikely. And Mrs. Justice Yip confirming that she will go ahead with the sentencing in his absence. Thomas Cashman making that decision not to enter court today. Of course, our viewers might remember that over the course of this trial, he has vehemently denied that he had any part to play in this shooting. He said he was not the gunman. He said he did not try to murder Joseph Nee, who the prosecution argued was the intended victim of this attack, that he did not wound Cheryl, that he did quite simply not pull the trigger. He has shown no remorse within the courtroom, although at times he was seen to be brushing away tears, where people describe the sequence of events that led to Olivia Pratt-Korbel being shot in the chest that night. But no remorse, no, at any point, of course, he said he was not guilty for all these charges, and today a refusal for him to appear in person in court to hear his sentencing.
That is breaking news as we wait for Thomas Cashman to be sentenced for the murder of 9-year-old Olivia Pratt-Korbel in Liverpool. Thomas Cashman has told his counsel, which has in turn told the judge, that he will not be appearing in the court dock this afternoon to hear his sentence. And as Katerina was saying there, nor to hear the family impact statements. Let's just remind viewers of the details of the case that has led us to the sentencing today. We can bring you footage now of Cashman's arrest. It was released after he was found guilty of murdering Olivia. The video shows Cashman being surrounded by armed officers on the 4th of September last year.
Come on, Dad! I'm on! Shows you on! Get your hands behind you then!
My hands are in the air.
What's your leg, fella?
I've got nothing on me.
Put your hands behind your head.
Okay, there you go.
Stay where you are. Do exactly what you're told. You understand what I'm saying to you? What's it for? For one. What have we done? What have we done? Tell you now. Go on. Put your knees up to your chest. Put your knees up to your chest. Sit on your ass. Stand up. What have we done? Go on.
You said you'll tell me. I'm not featured. I ain't your sister one little bit. I just want to know what I've done. That's all. All I want to know is what I'm arrested for. Tell me what I'm arrested for. Okay.
You're under arrest on suspicion of murder and a suspicion of attempt murder twice. Right, you do not have to say anything, but it may always offend you. Don't mention my question. Something which you may later line in court. Anything you do say will be given evidence. Right, you've been arrested for the prompt and effective investigation of the offence. Okay. Okay.
Yeah, well, I haven't committed no offence. I haven't committed no offence. What you're talking about?
All right. Lift them up a little minute.
None whatsoever.
Thomas Cashman there being arrested by police. It's worth reminding you of what's going on in Manchester Crown Court right now. There's been a slight delay to the sentencing of Thomas Cashman because he is refusing to be inside that courtroom when the sentence is handed down by the judge, Mrs. Justice Yip. The sentencing will be brought to you live here on Sky News, but the judge is going to deliver her sentencing remarks, which we can bring you live. This is after the prosecution and the defence have addressed the court. That is underway now. Standing by, our North of England correspondent, Katerina Vitozzi. And Katerina, remind us of the investigation that led to that moment we saw there and the arrest of Thomas Cashman.
Well, the murder of little 9-year-old Olivia sparked one of the most intense, and even the officers involved would admit, difficult investigations in Merseyside Police's history. They talked about combing hours and hours and hours of CCTV evidence, and you got a sense of that in the case that was presented here at Manchester Crown Court over the past 3 weeks. Moments and minutes and seconds leading up to the gunman chasing Joseph Nee down the street and then firing that shot into the house of Cheryl and Olivia Pratt-Korbel that in the end ultimately killed Olivia. Moments of these footage which showed Thomas Cashman's movement on that day were painstakingly presented in court to build a picture that the prosecution said was so compelling, that showed Thomas Cashman to be in the right place at the right time, that they felt it just brought a body of evidence that simply couldn't then in the end result in any other verdict other than a guilty verdict in terms of all the charges presented towards him. it has been an extremely difficult investigation, as I say, for Merseyside Police. We've heard interviews just in the last few hours with officers who were involved in it and really expressing how horrific it was that this was a case that involved a child who was ultimately entirely innocent, a family whose lives have been changed forever, caught up in a cycle of drug-based gang violence that has affected not only their family, but our entire community, who were scared and frightened by what happened, and many of them feeling too frightened to come forward and speak. We actually know that Merseyside Police at times had to use legal proceedings to get people to release CCTV footage of what was happening outside their properties on that evening. Such was the fear of the gang-related environment that there is in parts of Merseyside and continues to be in parts of Merseyside. And Olivia Pratt-Korbel's family showing immense strength and immense courage coming into court every day. But also crucially for the prosecution and for the police investigation was the witness statement from really the main prosecution witness, a woman who is now in witness protection, whose identity was not revealed in court, but who was the woman who said that Thomas Cashman on that night, after Olivia had been shot dead, that Thomas Cashman came into her house, woke her up, seeming agitated, asking for clean clothes, and then overhearing a conversation within which he said, "I've done Joey," and the police saying that it was an immense act of bravery for that woman to come forward, given the context that I've just outlined. And it was an enormous police investigation, and one that has resulted in Thomas Cashman being found relatively quickly by the jury, 1.5 days or so of deliberation, guilty of all 5 charges against him: the murder of Olivia, 9-year-old Olivia, the wounding of her mother, Cheryl, the attempted murder of Joseph Nee, the intended target of this attack, and then 2 counts of possession of an illegal firearm. And I think it's worth just reminding people that Thomas Cashman won't appear in court today. He's made that decision. His defence counsel's telling the judge it was because he heard that the CPS, the Crown Prosecution Service, had been singing "We Are the Champions" in the corridors after the guilty verdict was received on Thursday. Mr. Cashman saying he was concerned things were turning into a circus, but Mrs. Justice yet saying that whether or not that was true, that was still not a sufficient reason for him not to be in court to hear his sentencing, calling it disrespectful not only towards the court but also towards Olivia's family, and confirming that she will sentence him even if he's not there to hear it in person.
We are waiting to bring you the sentencing remarks of the judge live here on Sky News as soon as they get underway. We are hearing at the moment victim personal impact statements inside the courtroom. Olivia's father has been, the legal team for Olivia's family have been reading out John Pratt's victim personal statement. He has said that I've been asked to do the impossible and put into words how the murder of my beautiful daughter has affected me. No words can make you understand the pain I am feeling. My heart... sorry, I beg your pardon. She would never be given the opportunity to fall in love and have her own children. I would never get the opportunity to see my daughter on her wedding day. Most of all, I'll never get to see her grow into the beautiful woman she was destined to become. We have been robbed of her future and the amazing teenager and adult she was destined to become. She will forever be 9. It's 3 o'clock. You're watching Sky News. We are waiting for the sentencing of Thomas Cashman live here on the programme. The man found guilty last week for the murder of the young girl you're seeing on your screen there, 9-year-old Olivia Pratt-Korbel. It's been confirmed within the last 15 to 20 minutes that 34-year-old Thomas Cashman will not be in court for sentencing. He is going to receive a life sentence for the murder of young Olivia. This is after he chased a rival into her home in Liverpool last August. He is a drug dealer. He chased a rival into the home of young Olivia Pratt-Korbel. It was a crime that shocked the country. Well, Olivia's mum arrived at court a short while ago.
Cheryl, can you just ask how you're feeling?
I don't really know.
the words for anyone not connected with this crime, how we feel today for Olivia's mum. It is impossible. Let's just bring you some more of the victim statement from Olivia's father, John Pratt, that's been read out in the last few moments. These are all done away from TV cameras, the sentencing remarks from the judge we will bring to you live. But John Pratt saying, "No words can make you understand the pain that I am feeling. My heart has been forever broken by your actions." These, of course, the words of Olivia's father that he had hoped to say to Thomas Cashman directly, but of course he has chosen not to appear inside that courtroom today. Mr. Pratt goes on to say, "You took the decision to shoot into Olivia's home with no regard to who was there. I want you to know you have changed my life forever. We will never be a whole family again. You did that to us." Mr. Pratt said that he moved away from Liverpool for a period, and he said, "It was a constant reminder of the loss of my beautiful daughter. We lost precious time due to the COVID pandemic, but we always saw Olivia as much as we could. Little did I know that was the day before her death, the last time I saw her." The victim statements, impact statements being read out in court right now. We will bring you more of those as they are read out. We will bring you the sentencing remarks from the judge, Justice Yip, live here on Sky News as soon as that gets underway. Let's bring in our North of England correspondent, Katerina Vitozzi, who's outside Manchester Crown Court for us. And Katerina, there has been a delay in the sentencing because of Thomas Cashman's refusal to enter the courtroom, but proceedings are carrying on, and we're just into those deeply personal family impact statements, which is a chance for them to say exactly what Thomas Cashman's actions have done to their family.
Yes, and I think there would have been an expectation, certainly amongst the family members who are here, that those statements would have been heard in person by Thomas Cashman. But as you say, he has taken the decision not to come into the courtroom today, although he is in the court building, Manchester Crown Court, behind me. And we understand that is because of a reason given by his defence barrister to the judge, that Mr. Cashman heard that after the guilty verdict on Thursday, that the Crown Prosecution Service, or members of the Crown Prosecution Service, were singing "We Are the Champions." And due to that, Mr. Cashman says that he felt things were turning into a circus, and for that reason, he has decided not to come into the courtroom today. Mrs. Justice Yip saying that she felt that actually it was incredibly disrespectful, not only to the court, but of course also to the family of Olivia, that he has decided to do that, but she will continue the sentencing without him. But it also does mean, of course, that these victims' impact statements, we've already heard one read out on behalf of Olivia's father. It means that Thomas Cashman will not hear those firsthand and hear the heartbreak within those words. And in the last few minutes, Olivia's older sister, Chloe, has actually read out herself her own victim impact statement, moving into the witness box to recount her thoughts, feelings, what happened and what changed in that moment. On August 22nd, 2022, she says, "That day was the worst day of my life. Not only did I lose my baby sister, but I lost my best friend. I felt as though my heart had stopped beating. A piece of me left that night, and since then I felt as though I'm in a nightmare and I cannot wake up. My family and I are living in a real life tragedy. This is all because of selfish people thinking it's okay to carry guns and putting innocent people at risk. I miss my baby sister. I miss my best friend. I miss sharing my bedroom with her and hearing her talk all the time. I'm beyond grateful to have had 9 years of Olivia. I will keep those memories forever." Those words read out in person by Olivia Pratt-Korbel's older sister, Chloe, who has been here pretty consistently over the past 3 weeks. Olivia's mum, Cheryl, being here every single day, coming in today, as she did on Thursday, clutching a pink teddy bear, one of Olivia's favourite toys, in one of her favourite colours. And it is a colour that members of Olivia's family have been wearing as they've come to court. It's a colour we saw people wearing on the day of her funeral. And Olivia, her mum today, in fact, we've just had Olivia's mum's, Cheryl's, victim impact statement. If we have time, I'll just read that to you now. again, as I said, stepping into the witness box, carrying that pink teddy bear. She says the bear is made out of Olivia's pajamas, and now it sleeps with her in her bed. And she talks at the moment Olivia was born prematurely, weighing just over 4 pounds, saying she was so tiny she fit in one hand. And she talks and recounts of the years of seeing Olivia grow up. She says, I couldn't believe my baby was going into big school. She loved helping others. She had a special bond with one of her teachers who was such a social butterfly. She was particularly good with younger children. She was such a caring little girl. And she goes on to recount these special moments that she had with her daughter for 9 years, far too many, losing her in such a tragic way. And that victim impact statement of CHORLEY, Olivia's mum, still ongoing in court right now. And as I said, Thomas Cashman will not be there in person in court to hear the impact of his actions that night, the impact it had. He's made that decision not to go into the courtroom, and confirmation from Mrs. Justice Yip that he will be sentenced in his absence after making that decision not to come into the courtroom today.
Those family impact statements are being read out in court. After that comes the sentencing. Justice Yip will be delivering her sentencing remarks. We can bring that to you live here on Sky News. In the meantime, we can bring you some of those impact statements. Difficult for Katerina and I to read out. You can only imagine what it's like for family members to have to say these words in the courtroom without being able to say them to Thomas Cashman, the man who murdered their little Olivia. He has refused to go into the courtroom today. He has protested his innocence throughout this trial, but he has been found guilty and will be sentenced today for the murder of Olivia Pratt-Korbel. Olivia's dad, John Pratt, the legal team read out his victim personal statement. He said that Olivia will be forever 9 and will never call me dad again. He said, I've been asked to do the impossible and put into words how the murder of my beautiful daughter has affected me. No words can make you understand the pain I am feeling. He talked about sitting outside the cemetery because it was too painful to go inside, because that would make Olivia's death real. The statement directly addressed Thomas Cashman, but of course Thomas Cashman not there. Olivia's dad said, you took the decision to shoot into Olivia's home with no regard to who was there. I want you to know you have changed my life forever. We will never be a whole family again. You did that to us. Mr. Pratt said he has nightmares about how Olivia died. Every day, those nightmares remind me of Olivia and what I have lost. Those 4 girls and my 2 older daughters are the only reason I'm still here. Every day I feel completely overwhelmed and I don't know how I'll cope. Katerina, you know, us two reading out those statements, because we can't bring them to viewers here live on Sky News, it's difficult, but it's just a reminder of how important family statements are in court. It's their chance to speak. You know, if you're not giving evidence in a trial, that's a chance for them to tell the court, to tell the person that's committed that crime, to tell the world exactly how they feel and what justice means to them.
You are absolutely right in that the past 3 weeks, Olivia's family members have sat in the public gallery. They've listened to witness testimony. They've seen the pieces of CCTV. They've watched Thomas Cashman. They saw his defence and all his statements. And this, as you say, is their chance, if they're not called as a witness themselves, their chance for their voices to be heard in court. And I'll just read you a little bit more of the statement that's being made by CHORLEY Korbel, reading this not via prosecution team, but herself in her own voice. These are her words, and she would have expected today to be able to deliver them directly to Thomas Cashman, but he has made the decision not to go into the courtroom, not to hear these victim impact statements, and not to hear sentencing in person. Just a reminder that that decision was made, according to his defence team, by Mr. Cashman after he heard the Crown Prosecution Service singing "We Are the Champions" after the verdicts were delivered on Thursday. His defence team saying that Mr. Cashman was concerned things were turning into a circus now, so deciding not to come into the courtroom to hear the sentencing today. Mrs. Justice Yip saying, though, she, in her view, felt like it was extremely disrespectful for him not to come in, disrespectful both to the court, but of course to Olivia's family, who were there now having those victim impact statements read out either on their behalf or by themselves directly. Olivia's mum, Cheryl, her victim impact statement is still ongoing now. The first few minutes of it was her just remembering what it was like from the moment that little Olivia, her youngest child, was born to the moment that that trigger was pulled on August 22nd last year, and she died totally an innocent bystander. And Ms. Korbel continues in this victim impact statement. Sorry,
Katerina, you have it there. I was just going to say there is more information coming out as to what Olivia's mum, Cheryl, was saying. We saw her there clutching that teddy bear that she described as being made from Olivia's pyjamas so that she could take her to bed with her every night. She does continue her victim impact statement. We've got more of it that you can bring us, Katerina.
Yeah, she describes what it's like now being in her home without Olivia there. She describes Olivia, who she calls Liv. Liv never stopped talking. She would be chatting away. One thing I miss most is hearing her say, "Mum." I just miss hearing her voice. It's just so quiet. I would do anything to have her chatting to me. It's so lonely without her. Everything is so quiet. I can't cope with the silence. Setting my alarm at 7:30 in the morning is something ingrained in me. The day goes by in a blur. It gets to 2:30 and I think about the school pickup, something I will never do again. She will always be my baby. Tea time is a big thing for me. It was so centered around her and what she wanted for tea. Everything I do is a constant reminder that she is not there with me. This happened in our home where we should have been safe. We have no choice to leave Liv's first and only home. When we were allowed back, it was utter heartbreak. It was as though time had stood still. The cups of tea on the table next to her Princess Trust form. One of her dolls lay on the floor. In that moment, I was home. We were back to how our lives were before that night. I soaked up the surroundings until reality dawned and brought me back to our living nightmare. It's heartbreaking to hear those feelings so condensed into these victim impact statements. And Cheryl Korbel continues to say in this statement, packing up our home was horrendous, packing clothes, her toys, packing my baby's things into a box. No mother should ever have to do that. We left our friends, our neighbours. It's so hard to go back to the area I grew up in and raise my children. The smallest things remind me of Liv, her friends playing in the street. It's hard to accept she is no longer here. And Cheryl Korbel, Olivia's mum, continues, the night I realised Liv had been shot, I was not able to do CPR properly because of my injury. Remember, she was shot in the wrist by the same bullet that passed through her front door, passed through her wrist, injuring her, and that was the same bullet that then hit Olivia in the chest. She says, I did not have full use of my hand and I felt helpless. My neighbour tried all he could to save my baby. My worst nightmare was being separated from Liv and not being there when she needed me most. I cannot get my head around how Cashman continued to shoot after hearing the terrifying screams, the utter devastation he has caused. He doesn't care. How could he? Those words directed from Olivia's mother, Cheryl, to Thomas Cashman, who she would have expected to be in the courtroom to hear them in person. But he has decided not to be in the courtroom today for reasons I've described, not there in person to hear the words, the impact that his actions has had and devastating a family and leading to the death of an innocent 9-year-old girl.
Katerina, thank you. Yes, we are continuing to hear family impact statements. Katerina, just remind us of the sentencing that's going to happen today, what we could expect.
Thomas Cashman on Thursday was found guilty of 5 charges. 1, the murder of 9-year-old Olivia, the attempted murder of Joseph Nee, who the prosecution say was the intended target of his attack, the wounding of Olivia's mother, Cheryl, as I described there. She talks about being wounded in the wrist and hand and unable to use that then to provide CPR to her daughter as she lay bleeding in the corridor, and then further 2 charges of the possession of an illegal firearm. Now, the guilty verdict in respect to the charge of murder against Olivia would mean a mandatory life sentence with a minimum term of around 30 years. What we're expecting to hear is further legal argument. There will be then deliberations by the judge, who has taken her time with this sentencing. The guilty verdict came back on Thursday, but Mrs. Justice Yip saying she would take time to consider the sentencing, not coming back on Friday, but waiting until after the weekend to return that verdict. We'll also hear whether these sentences will run concurrently. There will undoubtedly be within the sentencing consideration of the fact that Thomas Cashman pleaded not guilty. He denied all these charges vehemently throughout this 3-week trial. He went into the witness stand and said, I was not the gunman, I did not do it. He showed no remorse for what had happened. So that will factor in, no doubt, to the sentencing that we're expecting today. After these victim impact statements are concluded, we would then expect a short pause while the judge retires to consider further her sentencing before then that is delivered. And that is something, that sentencing remarks, that we will be able to bring you live. For now, the victim impact statements continue to be read out in court. No cameras allowed at this point, but we can report what is being said, and it is important to hear what is being said, because this, as you say, is one of the first opportunities that many members of Olivia Pratt-Korbel's family will have to address Thomas Cashman, or at least have now their words conveyed to him, given that he's now decided not to be in the courtroom. We've got some further detail of the victim impact statement of Olivia's mother, Cheryl, who says directly about Thomas Cashman that his actions have left the biggest hole in our lives that can never be filled. That man set out to do a job, and he didn't care about anyone else who got in the way. He certainly couldn't own it either. Ryan, Chloe, those are Olivia's brother and sister, and I are just existing day to day. We have been waiting for the trial and not addressing how broken we are as a family. I can't think about rebuilding our lives without her. We've missed out on so much. My nan, who was 92, adored Liv, and Liv her. Recently, her health deteriorated and she was admitted to hospital. Due to being at court every day, we've not been able to spend enough quality time with her, and I believe she held on long enough to hear that coward had been found guilty. Sadly, my nan passed away last night. This family have endured such incredible heartbreak. My 9-year-old Liv was the light of our lives. She was a character. She was my baby. She had amazing qualities and knew what she wanted in life. She will never get to wear a prom dress, have a sweet 16th birthday, walk down the aisle, or become a mother and have children of her own. All that promise for her future so cruelly taken away. Now I have to drive to the cemetery to be close to my baby daughter. I miss her smile, her kisses, her cuddles. She will always be with me, my little shadow. We love you, endless amounts. And those are the last words in Cheryl Korbel's victim impact statement. She's described in being in the court, in the courtroom, in the court just behind me, of returning to her seat, still clutching that teddy bear made, as she described, from Olivia's pyjamas, that now she keeps with her in bed every night, her little shadow, as she describes her.
Oh, Katharina, thank you so much for reading that out. Difficult to hear, I mean, how Olivia's mum got up there and read out those words and kept her composure. You know, it's just incredible, the strength that that family have found, particularly as we heard there, a relative passed away last night, but they found comfort in the fact that Cheryl Korbel's nan was around long enough to find that Thomas Cashman had been found guilty of little Olivia's murder. We are expecting those sentencing remarks any moment now. We'll bring them to you live here on Sky News. Justice Yip will deliver those now that those impact statements have been read out. While we wait for that, let's speak to Chantal Lunt. She is a former police officer at Merseyside Police. Chantal, thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. Difficult for us to hear. I mean, you can't even imagine what it's like to be inside that courtroom and be part of that family that's dealing with this right now.
No, it's absolutely heartbreaking just listening to that victim impact statement by CHORLEY. It's just, the lives have been destroyed, and, you know, the fact that Thomas Cashman didn't even turn up to court to hear the impact that his actions have had just really speaks to that indifference. But just, my heart goes out to the family. It's absolutely devastating, and just really gets you there. I think as a mother as well, you know, as a mother of an 8-year-old, just all of those things, was a little one being a shadow, really, really just heartbreaking. And she's so brave, Cheryl, for standing up in court and reading out her own statement too.
When she said she would never be called mum again by Olivia, and just the silence, there's so much noise, you know, created by a 9-year-old. As a mother, you know, those are the simple things that will haunt her, and that's what she laid bare there in the courtroom. Thomas Cashman, as we've been explaining to our viewers, not in the courtroom today to hear his sentence, nor hear those family impact statements that are either read out by parts of the legal team or by members of the family themselves, if they feel up to doing so. Olivia's sister and mother have stood up to read out their statements in their own words. And Chantal, so difficult for the family. I mean, I can't even find a word to describe what they're going through, but difficult for Merseyside Police as well in terms of the pressure they were under. They will have felt this personally as well in terms of, you know, look at little Olivia there. That's, you know, one of their own in Liverpool. This was a community that came together to deliver justice for her.
Yeah. I mean, I think just the whole city felt it really, and as you know, the victim impact statement has shown, it's just, especially parents, it is everyone on that level, and really struck into that. Because it happened in the home, there's just this idea that you don't feel that anywhere is safe. So I think that when the police have investigated, that would really be at the forefront of their mind. They really needed to find this person. They needed to leave no stone unturned and work with the community to find a murderer, and also to reassure the community in terms of their response to, you know, gang activity in the region as a whole. So it's good that he's been brought to justice. It's good that the sentencing is happening today, but there's no bringing Olivia back, and all that we can hope is that the sentence reflects the devastation that has been caused to the family and the wider community through his actions.
Chantal, a final question for you. What impact would this have on the gangs in Liverpool, the drug wars, as it's been called? You know, looking at little Olivia's face there, we have been here before, you know, not just in Liverpool, but up and down the country. And we talk about watershed moments. This has to be the moment that things change. What's your view on that? Are you optimistic with regard to that?
I think, I know, as you touched upon, it's an issue that's countrywide, and it often happens in areas, working class areas, where there's a lot of marginalisation. I think for me, you've touched upon again, there's been children, you know, there have been children like Rhys Jones. Last year, there was a 14-year-old schoolgirl in Liverpool who was shot in the neck in the crossfire. And what often happens is these gang wars spill out onto the streets, and, you know, children and innocent bystanders get caught in the crossfire. Years ago, it was, you know, you very rarely heard of shootings happening in the daytime. Now they're happening in the daytime while, you know, kids who are going to school are out on the streets, and they're actually happening in the one safe space that children have, the homes. So I think it shook the community to the core. But in relation to gangs and criminal activity, I hope that the sentence really does reflect the crime, and it's enough to make people consider what the consequences of their actions are. Because if we look at what's happening in court with Thomas Cashman, there doesn't seem to be any remorse, there doesn't seem to be any reflection on what his actions have done and how they've devastated the family. There just seems to be basically it'll be the severity of the sentence that really might make them sit up and look and take account of what has happened. But I think this is a moment for the wider community, for the police force to really sit up and look and have a look at where we are. And again, not just in Liverpool, not just in Merseyside, but in the wider UK, because this is, you know, the prevalence of gangs are very much a reflection of the economic instability that we're facing, of the recessions, of marginalised communities, and young men who are getting younger and younger and younger being recruited into these gangs because they don't see another way. And I think we need not just a robust police response, not just the police rebuilding those links with the communities so that they know what is happening, so that they know what gang activity is happening, but we also need services, we need financial investment in communities so that young men aren't just walking into the arms of drug dealers, but into, you know, into rooms where they're being interviewed for jobs, into rooms where they're being interviewed for positions in academia, because it's lack of opportunities and absolute underfunding. Liverpool's got some of the most deprived areas in the country, and that's where you see this gang culture, that's where you see this prevalence, and it's reflected in deprived areas all over the UK. But I think we need to use this as a watershed moment, not only to look at what's happening, but look at the response to what's happening. And it needs to be a holistic response that isn't just on the police, but is on all factors of public services, which includes massive reinvestment and a massive rebuilding of trust within communities.
Chantal Lunt, thank you so much for joining us this afternoon while we await the sentencing remarks from Justice Yip at Manchester Crown Court, the sentencing of Thomas Cashman for the murder of Olivia Pratt-Korbel. Due shortly. Chantal Lunt, former police officer at Merseyside Police. It's worth reminding viewers why Thomas Cashman isn't appearing in court today. It does cause a delay to proceedings. His legal counsel have told the judge that he is not appearing in court personally because the Crown Prosecution Service, members of the Crown Prosecution Service sang "We Are the Champions" following the verdict in his trial. The judge, Mrs. Justice Yip, in response, said she regarded his lack of attendance as disrespectful to not only the court, but those interested in proceedings, including the family of Olivia. Would the family of Olivia have been brave once again on her behalf today? They have read out those personal family impact statements to the courtroom. They had hoped that Thomas Cashman would be there to hear them directly. However, he is not in court. Olivia Pratt-Korbel's father, John Pratt, he had his statement read out on his behalf. He said, "I want you to know that you have changed my life and my family's life forever. I have nightmares about how she died, and the nightmares won't go away. I am heartbroken. Sometimes I just want to end it so that I can be with Olivia again. I want to visit Olivia, and I sometimes sit outside the cemetery, but I can't go in because if I do, it will all seem too real." Mr. Pratt was in court, sitting, watching his statement be read out. The statement went on to say, "You have denied my beautiful girl Olivia her future. I will never see her on her wedding day and walk her down the aisle and see her grow into the beautiful woman she was destined to become. We have been robbed of her future because of you. She will always be forever 9. Olivia's sister, her older sister, stood up in court earlier to read her statement herself. She spoke from the witness box. Her sister is Chloe Korbel. She said this: "Olivia was the best friend I had always wanted. We were so close as I was not only her big sister, but I'd look after her when our mum was working. Olivia believed what was mine was also hers. I'd often look for something and not be able to find it. It'd turn up the next day in her makeup bag or in one of her drawers." Chloe said the day Olivia was killed was the worst of her life. She said, "Not only did I lose my baby sister, but I lost my best friend. When I was told she had passed away, I felt as though my heart stopped beating." Chloe said she and her family are living in a real life tragedy because of selfish people thinking it's okay to carry guns. Chloe Korbel went on to say, "I miss my baby sister and I miss my best friend. All the things we should be doing, shopping together, laughing together and making memories." Chloe Korbel, just a teenager, standing up in that witness box this afternoon to deliver that statement on behalf of herself, her family and her little sister, Olivia. Well, Olivia's mum, Cheryl Korbel, stood up and read out her statement as well. She said that Her 9-year-old was loved by everyone and never stopped talking. Cheryl Korbel in tears as she explained that Olivia was due to cut her hair to donate it to sick children, but was killed just 5 days before her appointment. Cheryl Korbel says, "I just miss hearing her voice. I would give anything in the world to have her chatting to me." Cheryl explained how the alarm goes off in their house at 7:30 in the morning every day. It's the time that she used to get up with Olivia, and the day then goes by in a blur. By 2:30, she says she is conditioned to be going on the school run, but that is something she says she will never be able to do again. Cheryl Korbel saying this happened in our home where we felt safe. She added that they were allowed to return to the house after the police investigation, and it was like time stood still. Cheryl Korbel saying, "I was not able to do CPR on Olivia because of my injury." You may remember that the bullet that fatally wounded young Olivia first went through the wrist of her mother. Cheryl Korbel saying, "I wasn't able to do CPR because of that injury. I felt helpless. My worst nightmare was being separated from Liv and not being with her when she needed me the most. I cannot get my head around how Cashman continued to shoot after he heard the screams. That man set out to do a job and he didn't care about anyone else or who got in the way." Olivia's mum saying it is so hard to go back to the area where she grew up and where she raised her 3 children. They've moved into a new house, which she said was difficult for the whole family. "I cannot even think about rebuilding our lives without her," she said. She went on to explain that while the trial has been on, her nan was admitted to hospital and she passed away last night. Cheryl Korbel saying that she believed her nan was holding on to hear that Thomas Cashman had been found guilty. She went on to describe Olivia as her shadow and ended her statement by saying her family will love her endlessly. Let's bring in our North of England correspondent, Katerina Vitozzi, who is at Manchester Crown Court. Katerina, the family impact statements have now been read out in court, and the legal proceedings from both legal teams have finished. So it could be any time now within the next few minutes that we'll hear the judge's sentencing remarks live here on Sky News.
Yeah, Mrs. Justice Yip has temporarily left the courtroom. She will take a few minutes, we understand, and then come back to deliver her sentence. Remember, it's not just the charge of Olivia's murder that Thomas Cashman...
All right, I'm just going to step in for a couple of minutes because I'm aware that I'm live streaming Sky News here, and you know, for fair use and all that, I am meant to stop it and so on. So I've been streaming Sky News for quite a while now. We're now an hour and a half later. The actual hearing was meant to start at 2 o'clock, but it was delayed for about half an hour because Cashman wouldn't come into the courtroom himself because he was too cowardly. So for those of you just coming in, this is the sentencing hearing for Thomas Cashman, who shot to death little 9-year-old Olivia Pratt-Korbel, who is on your screen right now. This happened in Dovecot, Liverpool, which is less than 30 miles away from where I live, on August 22nd last year. I followed this case right from day one. I think I streamed on the very night it happened or the night after it happened. So I do have a playlist on Olivia. I followed the entire thing all the way through, and I've been reporting on the trial as it's gone on. There was a 3-week trial. Thomas Cashman spent a long time on the stand being cross-examined and just being cocky and just a horrible, horrible man. And now he's too cowardly to even face his own sentencing hearing. So it took, it took about half an hour for them to actually start the hearing. And then the victim impact statements that the people, the reporters here have been reading out are not televised. Usually cameras are not allowed in courts in the UK, but there is a trial going on at the moment, like a trial use of cameras in court. And some judges are allowing sentencing to be filmed and live streamed. So Justice Yip the judge in this case is allowing the sentencing of Thomas Cashman to be streamed live, and that's what we're waiting for now. So the statements from the prosecution and the defence, and then the victim impact statements, they are not televised, but the sentencing will be. So any minute now, we will get the live sentencing from Justice Yip. She's just stepped away. She's having a few minutes break, and then she's going to come back and deliver her sentence. So we should get that in the next few minutes. So as I've been saying in the chat, if you've been reading the chat, I just think this is outrageous. It should be compulsory. 8 miles away from you, Mo. I think it's 28 miles for me, like door to door from my door to Olivia's door. Yeah, I think it should be compulsory that a convicted coward like this guy should be made to come into court, made to listen to what the family have to say, and bring him in chains. If they don't use chains in the UK, but I'm sure there can be an exception. Just bring him in, cuffed, just force him in, drag him in, make him come in. I didn't know it wasn't compulsory. I really didn't know it wasn't compulsory. This is not common. This is not what is done in Britain normally. But it's here we go.
Yep, set out the details of Olivia's death. So we have to warn you, this may be distressing.
Has refused to come from the cells to be sentenced. I have directed that he should do so, but he has maintained his refusal. I am therefore left with no choice but to sentence him in his absence. These sentencing remarks will be made available to him in writing. All 5 offences arise out of the events of the 22nd of August 2022, when, armed with 2 guns, the defendant set out to kill Joseph Nee. He lay in wait before opening fire in a residential street. CCTV footage captured him standing over Mr. Nee, shooting at close range. When the first gun malfunctioned, Mr. Nee was able to scramble away, but the defendant had his second gun ready. He relentlessly pursued Mr. Nee, causing him to seek refuge by barging into the home occupied by Olivia's family. Undeterred and wholly unconcerned for the safety of others, he continued to shoot at Joseph Nee, firing into that family home. Olivia, just 9 years old, heard the commotion from her bed. Unsurprisingly, she came downstairs to seek the comfort of her mother. Her last words were, "Mum, I'm scared." In a terrible twist of fate, she had stepped directly into the line of fire. As her mother battled to keep the front door closed, the defendant fired a shot that passed straight through the door, then through Cheryl Korbel's wrist and into Olivia's chest, killing her. The defendant then managed to get his hand inside the door and fired another shot inside the house. Fortunately, the door was closed on his hand and the bullet discharged into the door frame, avoiding the people inside. For the murder of Olivia, there is only one sentence that can be passed. That is a mandatory life sentence. Let there be no misunderstanding about this. The sentence will be one of life imprisonment. That means that the defendant may spend the rest of his days in prison. However, for reasons I shall explain, this is not a case which requires a whole life order. I must therefore specify the minimum term which must elapse before the defendant can apply to be released on licence. That is the shortest period that he will be required to serve in prison. There is no guarantee that he will in fact be released at that stage. That will be a matter for the parole board. I will specify sentences for the other offences, but they will be served concurrently with the sentence for murder. which will reflect the totality of the offending. The killing of Olivia Pratt-Korbel is an offence that shocked not only the city of Liverpool, but the nation. Olivia's name is likely to be remembered for many years. She should not be remembered only for her dreadful last moments. Her family have spoken today of Olivia in life and of the hopes and dreams for her future, which were so cruelly snatched away. It is plain that Olivia was a lovely little girl who cared for others and brightened the lives of her family and friends. They have suffered an unimaginable loss, which they must carry for the rest of their lives. Nothing I say or do today will ease that, but they should know that they have my sympathy. The mental scars from that night will persist forever. Cheryl Korbel must also bear the physical scars on her wrist and hand. She must have suffered terrible pain as the bullet passed through her body, but her bravery and strength is obvious. She had fought to keep the trouble outside, and she ignored the pain as she desperately tried to save Olivia. The need for her to receive emergency treatment meant that she could not be with her daughter when she died. Nobody suggests that the defendant intended to kill Olivia or to harm Cheryl. But even if he did not know Olivia was in the firing line, the same cannot be said about Cheryl. She opened her door and stepped outside to see what was happening. She immediately recognized the gravity of the situation and hurried back to get inside and secure her home. It will have been apparent to the defendant that she was not connected with Joseph Nee and was trying to keep him out. He knew, therefore, that a wholly innocent woman was by the door, and yet that is where he chose to take aim. Had he paused to think for one moment, it would have been obvious that this was a family home and that others, perhaps including children, were at risk. But the defendant was focused only on the murder of Joseph Nee, and no one else mattered to him. Precisely what lay behind the attempt on Joseph Nee's life has not emerged. The court did not hear from him, and the defendant was certainly not willing to share the truth. On his own evidence, the defendant led a criminal lifestyle in the course of which he was prepared to use threats and violence. Mr. Nee was a man with enemies who had been shot at previously. That provides the context for what's happened. Whatever Mr. Nee may have done, it plainly did not justify the attempt on his life. He suffered serious injuries and is lucky to be alive. After things went so tragically wrong, the defendant went to the home of the woman who was brave enough to come to court to give evidence against him. I have made an order granting her lifelong anonymity and will not name her now. Her evidence was significant, as they both realised. She chose to do the right thing. The defendant invented a defence designed to humiliate and undermine her. It did not work. She was subjected to lengthy questioning about the most intimate details, but she stood firm. I am sorry that she had to endure that, but endure it she did, and her courage is to be applauded. In sentencing for the murder of Olivia Pratt-Korbel, I must follow the statutory provisions set out in Schedule 21 of the Sentencing Act 2020. Paragraph 2(2)(b)(a) of Schedule 21 provides that the starting point for the murder of a child involving a substantial degree of planning or premeditation is a whole life order. I have considered whether that applies to this case, but have concluded it does not, because the planning and premeditation was not directed at the child. There is no doubt, though, that the seriousness of the murder, taken in combination with the other offences, is particularly grave, such as to require a lengthy minimum term. The starting point for any murder involving a firearm is 30 years, as set out in paragraph 3 of Schedule 21. I must then consider the aggravating and mitigating factors set out in paragraphs 9 and 10 together with any other relevant circumstances. There can be no doubt that this shooting involved a significant degree of planning and premeditation. I bear in mind that many, if not most, murders involving firearms involve some premeditation, and that is already accounted for in the starting point. The evidence in this case demonstrates planning going well beyond that. The defendant had sourced 2 guns, presumably to allow for the possibility of one misfiring. He knew what van Joseph Nee was driving, and I am sure that he was looking out for him earlier that day. Having spotted his van, he changed his clothes and concealed his face before heading towards him, only to realise that Mr. Nee had left. Later, having seen the van again and realising Mr. Nee was likely to remain where he was until the end of the televised football, the defendant again changed his clothes, got into position and lay in wait. This was a targeted, planned execution attempt. It commenced in a residential street. Even as Mr. Nee ran for his life, the defendant ruthlessly pursued him. He then fired more shots as Mr. Nee tried to take cover in a determined effort to complete what he had set out to do. It is accepted on the defendant's behalf that Olivia was a particularly vulnerable victim because of her age. I do not necessarily agree that Olivia's age made her more vulnerable to being killed in these specific circumstances, but it is academic to debate whether the case comes within paragraph 9b. The real gravity of this case is that a young child was shot and killed in her own home. As children do, Olivia was coming downstairs to seek reassurance. Cheryl Korbel should have been able to give that reassurance and to tuck Olivia back into bed. What's happened instead was chilling and strikes fear not only into the immediate community, but also into the minds of other children and their parents. Shooting into a family home with no regard for who may be caught in the crossfire is obviously a very significant aggravating factor, which must be reflected in the minimum term. None of the statutory mitigating factors apply in this case. While right that there was no intent to kill Olivia, the fatal shot was fired with the clearest possible intent to kill, and I have determined that the shooting was premeditated. The fact that the intent was directed towards Joseph Nee offers no mitigation. Had the defendant planned to kill Olivia, he would have been facing a whole life order. Even had the defendant killed Joseph Nee rather than Olivia, the premeditated nature of the killing, the use of 2 firearms, and the firing of shots into a family home would still have required a substantial uplift. The fact that it was Olivia who died undoubtedly makes the offence more serious still. Further, I am not considering this offence in isolation. The defendant must also be sentenced for the other offences. I shall take care not to double count features that are common to counts 1 to 3. I am very conscious that the shot that killed Olivia was one of those aimed at Joseph Nee while attempting to kill him, and was the same shot that wounded Cheryl Korbel. However, I must reflect the fact that the harm caused was not limited to killing Olivia, but also included serious injury to 2 other people. Had I been sentencing the defendant for the attempted murder of Joseph Nee alone, I would have imposed a life sentence because of the obvious risk of serious harm he poses to members of the public. I agree with the submissions that this is a category A2 case within the relevant sentencing guideline. That gives a starting point of a determinate sentence of 30 years and a range of 25 to 35 years. Even in the context of a category A case, the offence is aggravated by the planning, the relentless pursuit of Mr. Nee, and the use of 2 firearms. So I will select a figure towards the upper end of the range. In setting the minimum term to be served on a discretionary life sentence, the notional term should be discounted by 1/3 to reflect the early release provisions which apply to a determinate sentence. I need not dwell further on the minimum term for count 2, since it will make no practical difference to the minimum term which must be served, which will be that imposed on count 1. For count 3, wounding Cheryl Korbel with intent to do grievous bodily harm to another, the offence falls into category A2 in the relevant guideline, giving a starting point of 7 years imprisonment and a range of 6 to 10 years. The offence is aggravated by being committed against a woman in her own home, and I consider that a sentence at the top of that range is appropriate. The firearms offences charged as counts 4 and 5 are part and parcel of the other offences. It would be wholly artificial to consider the appropriate sentence for these 2 offences had they stood alone. They are category A1 offences within the relevant guideline. The sentences on these counts will not impact on the overall term the defendant must serve. It is therefore unnecessary to say more, and I will simply adopt the starting point suggested by the guideline, namely 18 years imprisonment. I have explained the approach to the sentences for the individual offences only so that the defendant and others know how I have arrived at the eventual sentence which I impose. The reality is that the defendant's offending cannot be compartmentalised, and the minimum term to be served will reflect the totality of his offending. The defendant murdered Olivia Pratt-Korbel, a young child, in her own home. He did so in the course of attempting to murder Joseph Nee as part of a planned and sustained attack involving the use of 2 firearms. He caused serious injuries to Mr. Nee and came close to killing him. He also shot Cheryl Korbel, causing her significant physical injury, to say nothing of the psychological scars he caused her and others. That is the basis on which he will be sentenced. The defendant is now aged 34. He is not of previous good character. Any attempt to rely on an absence of any significant history of violence has to be viewed in the context of what he told the jury. He made it quite clear that he was a criminal who used threats and violence when it suited him. Although I will not treat that as aggravation, there is no mitigation to be found in his history. The defendant has not acknowledged his responsibility for Olivia's death and so has demonstrated no remorse. His failure to come into court is perhaps further evidence of that, although I make it clear that this has not caused me to increase his sentence. The defendant is a father, and I accept that being taken away from his children is a loss for him and for them. It is a loss that he is wholly responsible for. There is, in my judgment, no real mitigation available to the defendant. I now pronounce the sentence. On count 1, for the murder of Olivia Pratt-Korbel, the sentence will be life imprisonment. The minimum term will be 42 years, less the time the defendant has already spent on remand. On count 2, the attempted murder of Joseph Nee, the sentence is life imprisonment with a minimum term of 22 years. On count 3, wounding Cheryl Korbel with intent to do grievous bodily harm to another, the sentence is 10 years imprisonment. On counts 4 and 5, the firearms offences, the sentence is 18 years imprisonment on each. All those sentences are to be served concurrently, meaning that the shortest period the defendant will be required to serve before he can be considered for early release from the sentence of life imprisonment is 42 years, less the 182 days he has served on remand. After he has served that minimum term, he can only be released if the parole board decide that is appropriate. He would then remain on licence for the remainder of his life. The statutory surcharge will be added to the record. Thank you. That completes my sentencing remarks and it completes the sentencing hearing.
Well, there you have it, the sentencing of Thomas Cashman for the murder of 9-year-old Olivia Pratt-Korbel. It is a life sentence.
And there we have it. There we have it. So he's 34 years old now. So if my math is right, 42 years, he's going to be 76 by the time he gets the opportunity to apply for parole. That's a good sentence. That's justice. That's justice. 76. Okay, so it minuses the time that he's already spent on remand. So that's about what, from September last year to now, 6 months. He's still going to be 75, 76. So that's, I'm happy with that. It's a shame that she did the other sentences concurrently and not consecutively, because that would have given him another 22 years and then another however many years, another 10 years, I think she said. So he would have been like, you know, over 100. But 76, I don't think he's going to pose any threat to society from now on. I think he's going to die in prison. Yeah, I think he's going to die in prison because, you know, you don't, it's not conducive to long life, isn't prison, when you are a child killer. So, yeah, there we go. So he will be serving a minimum term of 42 years. So in 42 years' time, he will be able to apply for parole. Now, it doesn't mean to say that he'd get it. It doesn't mean to say that he'd get it at all. It will be down to the parole board. So exactly like it works in the States, it works the same here. So when you're ready for parole, when your term is almost up, they assess you. So they'll get reports from, they heavily rely on psychology, psychological reports. And if there's any hint whatsoever that you're not ready, that you're not accepting your sentence, that you've been bad in prison, so they'll take into account things like drugs. You know, if he tries to do his own drug dealing, they'll take that into account. He's got a very, very long road, and something tells me that he is not going to survive until the age of 76. So effectively, this is a whole life term. Now, there are very, very specific categories in the UK for whole life terms. It's very, very difficult for a judge to give a whole life term. It virtually never happens. There are cases where a whole life term has been served, but 42 years, I think I'm happy with that. He would have to admit guilt, Kathy, you're right, absolutely. He'd have to admit guilt. He'd have to keep his nose exceptionally clean. Basically everything is taken into account, and he's got 42 years to step out of line, and it will all be recorded. It will all be recorded. So, you know, and gangs operate in prisons. So something tells me he's not going to survive until the age of 76, because prisoners can be got to. So there we have it. There we have it. That's what we've waited for. I highly doubt he'll be a model prisoner. Absolutely. I doubt it as well. I very much doubt it. Very much doubt it. Yeah, the other one, there's been a few, there's been a handful. I've got one on this channel. The woman, I can't remember her name now, the woman who killed her friend and then put her friend's body in a suitcase and walked away with it, and it was all on CCTV. The judge televised the sentencing in that. It's a trial at the moment. The judges are trying out how they like cameras in courts. So if this works out well, and judges get used to delivering sentences on camera, then maybe at some point in the future we're going to get whole trials that are televised. I think you watched it yesterday. It's a good one. Yeah, it's a good one. I can't remember her name. It's a good one. Okay, so that's it. So I'll leave it there. I'm just very pleased that Olivia has got justice. I hope her family are pleased with the outcome as much as they can be. I mean, this has just been an absolute nightmare. But to know that Cashman's off the streets for the next 42 years has got to be good news to them. There will be a bounty out on his life. There absolutely will be. There will be. He'll go to one of the high security prisons in the UK. I think from here, I think Wakefield's the closest one. There's a handful of really high security, so places where you've got these people like Cashman who've made a bit of a name for themselves and whatever, but he's not guaranteed. It'll be where they've got a place for him. It'll be where they fit him in. But yeah, so bye Tommy. Bye Tommy Cashman. All right, guys, I'm gonna go. Thank you so much for keeping me company while we've waited a long time for that. And thank you, as always, to the mods. I didn't get any donations, I don't think, so I don't need to thank you for that either. And there's no memberships on this channel, so we haven't had any new members because there's no memberships on this channel. All right, guys, I'll speak very soon. See you later. Enjoy the rest of your day.